think the kind of effort that schools have put in, the kind of effort that teachers have put in to adopt technology, to adopt online education is marvelous. But there is a huge difference between making an effort to survive and creating a plan to succeed, creating a plan to grow. What we have done so far in the last 6 months could be very similar to a man who's drowning in river, and he wants to make sure that he wants to say, floating, keep floating. And what he does is he just haphazardly keeps on flapping the water, trying to figure out ways to survive. So most of what we have done in the last 6 months in terms of using technology is basically our survival strategy. But what we need to move ahead and think beyond survival, now that we know we can survive this period, and that would not be a problem, we now need to figure out ways to really integrate technology in a meaningful way into our pedagogy, okay, into the learning, teaching, learning, into assessment, using technology also for administrative tasks, planning, using technology for professional development, and also using it in a manner that we can grow with it and our students can grow with it. So we stand at that juncture where we need to take on some bold steps. And the history of the last 6 months has proven to us that we are capable of doing that. So it has shown us beyond any doubt that schools can create a response to a system like this, and they can move ahead. Yes, we need a direction. We need to figure out what's the right thing to do. And the chapter 23 and 24 of the National Education Policy very rightly define what we need to think about, what are some of the important issues that we will face. And we are going to be discussing those two chapters. With me today, I have two very good panelists. And the idea behind our panelists and Convo is that we need to look at the policy from the views of the practitioner. I think that's very important. So policy is great. There are great documents, but until and unless we objectively, figure out what are the problems that practitioners could face and what are the possible solutions that they could come up with. So we have with us Mrs. Rachna Sharma from Silver Oaks International School in Hyderabad, who is the vice principal there, and she has been actively involved in integrating technology in her school also. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us on eConvo. We also have with us Mrs. Sonia Wadhwa from Sanskar Valley School, Bhopal. And as the HOD of the ICT department, she has taken a lot of steps in the last 6 months to make sure that the teachers and the students are all comfortable using ICT in the teaching learning process. So I welcome both of you to the show. And the structure is very clear. I'll give each one of you about 5 minutes to make your opening remarks. And once that is done, we'll have some question answers, because the idea is that we would like to take up as many questions as possible. During registration, we usually ask people to submit questions to us, and I have 2 whole sheets of questions for you. So we have a lot of questions for you. So don't think that if people don't ask questions, I won't have questions. I have a lot of questions for you. But before we do that, we'll give, and if any of the participants wants to ask question, please go ahead and raise your hands. You can put it in the question answer tab also in the bottom. And without further delay, Rachna ji, I invite you to please share your views. And you have 5 minutes to do that, and then I'll take it to Sonia. Rachna, all yours.
A very good evening, and thank you, Dr. Atul, for having me here. Um, the NEP has very strongly brought forward technology and digital integration into the mainstream teaching learning. It weaves the digital thread across the fabric of the education system, giving technology its attention that it always needed. In the policy, if we look at the policy closely, in the policy, the central principle steering the education system is the extensive. It says in the policy, it says extensive use of technology in teaching and learning, removing language barriers, increasing access, as well as education planning and management. So it is looking at all the different facets of within the education realm uh, in bringing in technology. Now, the adaptation of technology in the new policy also talks about online learning, teacher training, digital libraries, digital repositories, all that. And it also uses the technologies of it talks about using of technology of animation, gamification, AR, VR, AI, blockchain. So the whole gamut is there. It's talking of all that being brought in into the teaching learning process. Now, one thing that I am very, very happy about is today, and as you said very rightly, owing to the last 6 months, the conversation has shifted from whether technology should be used in learning to how it can improve learning. So that shifting of conversation, especially in India, is a very big thing to happen. Earlier, we were contemplating, 6 months earlier, we were contemplating, should technology be used, should it not be used? What are the pluses, what are the minuses? But now that is no longer the conversation. Technology is here to stay. How we can make it better, how we can use it better is the conversation now. And NEP gives that required thrust for it. And the Digital India campaign, that has also been able to build the digitally empowered society in India, and a knowledge economy has been established. Now that has established thanks to all these students who learn technology, or who have been educated, who have learned technology, or education of technology has happened. Now we are looking at that technology supporting the education. Now, when I look at how this can help, how technology can help, the most prominent thing that comes to my mind is that technology can make a level field of education possible to all aspects, to all people across. It is the opportunities are level field now. It is not urban schools can get extra or rural schools do not get. It brings that level field to everybody. It also ensures quality education to the disadvantaged sections and the Divyang students. Now, it does definitely encompass everything that is required to be done. Now, for this to happen, there are challenges. There are challenges which the NEP talks of, which you talk of, which I talk of, which all of us talk about. Now, these challenges that lie ahead are that of affordability, access, teacher readiness, screen time, effects of digital media on social and psychomotor dimensions, and so on. It is now the responsibility of us, we, the educators, to see to it that we overcome these challenges and make that a technological driven education possible. Because when we look at the NAP, or when we try to understand it, we know that this will bring a lot of equality, a lot of learning opportunities for people across. And learning is not really meant only for a certain section of society. We know we have issues across the country because of which learning doesn't happen as adequately. And that is the reason why we don't fare too well in the varied tests which are conducted, the PISA test, or different tests which are conducted. Not that they are the parameter of testing, but yes, we know that there are gaps, we know that there are loopholes. To be able to overcome that, this will be able to help. And that's where uh, making the technology dream of NAP possible is something that we all need to work on. There are problems, there are pluses, there are minuses, there are problems, there are issues, there are advantages. Let's work together on seeing that those disadvantages or the problems are taken care of, and we work towards making a better idea. So that would be my opening remark.
Very rightly said, Rachnaji, and I totally agree with you that I think in any ecosystem, problems always exist.
Yeah.
And I think now that since it has been pretty much clear to all of us that blended learning is going to be the way forward in whatever capacity, I think we all need to come together as a community of educators to try to address some of the issues and find the best possible challenges. We might not be able to solve all the problems immediately, but we should remember that integrating technology is a journey. It's not a destination. It's as we move along the path, we'll find better solutions, we'll implement them. It's not a pill that we can just take today and everything will be hunky-dory tomorrow. I think we need to start working towards the right goal. And very rightly said, ma'am, and we'll look at some of the issues that you pointed out. I'm sure they'll come up in questions and we'll pick it up. Sonia ji, your time starts now. Your address. 5 minutes.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Nishchal and ICSL for giving me this opportunity. So, as Rachna ji has already spoken about the important logistic aspects and the key issues which NEP has highlighted and the guidelines which they have given, I am going to talk about more generic aspect of today's discussion. So I will take it from there where Dr. Nishchal, you left. You said that so far this 6-month journey was as if we were, being thrown into a swimming pool and we all had to swim. So we did what was bare minimum required. But talking about my experience, I fully agree with you. From last 4-5 years as the IT manager and IT head at school, I was making this genuine effort for educators to leverage technology. Not that something edtech was a fancy term for progressive schools to include, because I believe in the power of technology to take the learning to the next level. Technology is definitely on any given day is an enabler in the hand of our teachers. Teachers will never be replaced, but teachers with technology will replace soon the teachers without technology. And I was trying to make this point to many educators, not only in my school, but across pan India. But the results or acceptance was very less. There were two reasons for that. Some of the teachers, those who were in the age bracket 30 to 60, there was reluctance to try something new. They always had this fear with technology. The comfort level was not there. In spite of so many orientation workshop, they will sit there and then there was no implementation of what we were trying to do as IT heads of the schools. But I saw that happening within 1 month when this pandemic came, because at the end of the day, the teachers are teachers. They are in this noble profession and they want learning to happen. At the same time, when they were choosing the easy way out and undermining some of the aspects which digital pedagogies very strongly can support with. We all have heard of Bloom taxonomy. We all have heard that there are different kind of learners in our class. Some learn by seeing, some learn by doing. There are kinesthetic learner, but still many of us continue to teach with chalk and talk in spite of so much facilities available with us. But then when this pandemic came and teachers started to teach using visual aids, they started to use all kind of technologies. At some point of time, they also got this clue from the students that this is something they also could cater to all kind of learners in the class, because some taught using presentations, some use multimedia videos and all. So one very good thing which came out, first, the fear of technology is removed from the head. That block mindset that we cannot do something, this is for young generation to do, so that block is being removed. Everybody, I know there is a teacher, 50-year-old, that ma'am would, to open her mail, would make somebody sit next to her, and now she says that I can comfortably be on my laptop teaching for 8 hours and then checking assessment, conducting video based assessment. So that something that good happened is that fear is gone. And as you said that this is crisis management. Now what is the way forward, and how national education policy very rightly have made provision for all that. I'm sure when we are seeing that technology, the two myths have been removed, that edtech is very costly, which was very prominent myth, 5 years back, and principals were fed up when these salesmen were outside their office selling their ERPs and that software. In this time of crisis, I think schools with bare minimum investment have created this infrastructure where thousands of students are studying. Even I don't want to name some other tech companies, but Google, Microsoft, Zoom, everybody pitched in, and at very bare minimum cost they made the technology available. So when it is easily available, so that two major myths were removed, that it is expensive, and second, it is not for everyone to try. Now moving on from here, we are definitely going to have this hybrid model, because teachers now understood that in the school I had to actually put a request and mail to get the remedial session done with many of the students, and there was a protocol that I had to follow. Now with this technology in my hand, I can anytime get connected with my learner, and I'm not dependent on anybody to give me that extra slot. Now coming to the provisions that has been done beautifully to leverage technology.
I think,
Sorry.
yeah, you're
I'm so
muted
sorry.
yourself.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. So I think I'll just conclude by saying that the education policy has very rightly given us the framework, that what is the way forward. Now the challenges will come in terms of bringing parity between the government schools and the private schools. But I'm sure government schools have also seen that with even with that limited infrastructure, there is so much available in the domain of technology, where they can make the learning better, if not the A class digital pedagogies, but at least there is something available to them also to take the learning of their learners to the next level by leveraging these digital pedagogies. And I'm sure a lot is happening, a brainstorming is happening, the fund will be released, and people in the community are trying to portals like Swayam, portal like Disha. I'm sure they don't need any kind of investment, and they're easily available for each and every sector of the society to leverage the resources.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for bringing in a very good perspective of what we are going to be talking about in the next 45 minutes also. I think you have touched upon some very good points. Very important factor that you said was that the phobia that a lot of teachers had about technology, which was stopping them from using technology in their classrooms, has really gone away. But at the same time, there might be a few people still remaining, few teachers, still remaining who cannot work on technology. But I think over a period of time, they will also learn the skills, because technology is just a skill, right? You develop that. But what is more important, and before I start taking questions, we already have two hands raised. Nina, Ajay, Vinuta, I'll be taking up your questions after this. But first, I have one question for both the panelists. So, what happened in the first phase of technology adoption is that we took our classroom pedagogy, the way we were teaching things in the classroom, and we started using technology for remote access. So what we were doing was that if I, as a math teacher, was solving integration problems on the blackboard during class, now what I did was I started streaming that lesson live, or I started recording that lesson and then giving it to my students. So primarily the usage of technology was not in terms of changing the pedagogy, okay, but it was keeping the same classroom pedagogy and using technology as a means to distribute it or means to access it. Now, blended pedagogy or pedagogy for blended learning is quite different from the pedagogy that we used in a classroom environment. So, how is it different? First of all, that's a question. And how would teachers be trained to change their pedagogical approach. So first of all, Rachna ji, how is it different? How is the blended learning pedagogy different from classroom teaching pedagogy? And what are the kind of areas that teachers will need to consider in transforming their pedagogical skills? You need to unmute yourself.
Uh, in in this case, what happens is now the teacher is no longer running the show, or she's the facilitator, but she's not at the center of the thing. The content is not the king. It is not entirely content driven. It is more student led, and it is more student centric when we talk of a blended learning pattern. In such a case, what would happen is the teacher or the facilitator will be supporting the learning. So we will not really learn, as John Dewey had said, we will not, we learn mostly by experience, not only by experience, but also reflecting on our experiences. That's how learning majorly happens. So what would happen now is we would change our pedagogy, or we would need to change our pedagogy from a completely teacher-centric thing to a student-centric thing. Now, how can that be possible? There are multiple ways by which we can make it possible. Like we could get into problem-based learning, we could get into inquiry-based learning, we could do case-based learning, we could do a flipped classroom. In all this, the learning does happen, but it is not run only through the teacher, or the teacher is not the one who is running it. She gives that problem, and then they start looking at, what do I know, what do I need to know, how do I learn what I need to know, and how do I then use what I have learned into solving that particular problem. So there is a flip, there is a change. Now in a flipped classroom, what happens? The content which is available in the textbooks is equally available in Google. Anywhere that content is available, you tell the children to read that. What the teacher does is offers her intellectual capabilities. When they have the discussion, those intellectual discussions with the teacher and the students all around build the intellectual capital of the class. That's how the intellectual capital of the class is built. Now, it is not only teacher, it is peer-to-peer learning also that is happening. So from the teacher, peer-to-peer, teacher is there to monitor so that there's nothing wrong that is learned. But then, yeah, she's a part of the entire thing. So she's no longer the king, or she's not one person who's leading the class, she's a part of the class. So that way, these kind of different pedagogies, or let's look at the inquiry-based learning. You give them a task. There are different ways of inquiry. Now, somebody would say that inquiry would mean research, which would again mean using the computer. No, inquiry would mean using your other resources which are available. You could go and find out from people. You could do varied kind of things, and then you could collect the data. And that understanding put together, coming from student X, student Y, student Z, put together makes the learning bigger. So these are the kind of pedagogies we could be looking at through blended learning. Now, to make that possible, to make a blended learning kind of a thing possible, we have to understand and we have to accept that we as teachers are not digital natives. We have just been ushered into the digital area, whereas our students are digital natives. They definitely know more, can do more. But having said that, there are adequate and more efforts being made by the teachers themselves, by the schools, by the institutions, by CBSE, to ensure that teachers learn technology. They are like, there is a course on AR by CBSE, something we wouldn't have really thought of, but then they are teaching. So making the heart come out of your textbook and you actually see the heart pumping is something that is being made available to teachers free of cost by CBSE. So there is work happening on that arena. It definitely, ours is a large country, everything would take a little time. So that will take a little time, but it is possible. Then again, technology is not, AR, I'm talking of a higher end. Technology also has to be taught to those people who have absolutely no idea. So I would say it is learning on the go that has to happen, depending on the need, depending on the requirement, depending on the circumstances, depending on the level of at what the teacher is, the learning of technology has to happen. And that can vary place to place, area to area. Now, it could be learning of presentation skills, it could be learning of different softwares, those simple clickers that you have available to get the answers from the students, or how to make an online project possible, or how to make collaboration possible, or how to make assessments possible, how to gamify what you want them to learn. How to make the quizzes possible, how to make the optimum use of the LMS that we use. All that is depending, again, as I said, it is one on the go, depending on the need right then. And that we have seen through the pandemic. Because there was a need, so much learning did happen. It just did happen, which wouldn't have happened, as earlier also it was mentioned, it wouldn't have happened just like that. It has to happen only, it happened only because there was that pressing need, there was no other way out. Similarly, so depending on the need of the teacher, depending on the need of the area, the learning has to be done. And other than technological learning, a lot of pedagogical learning has to be also done, which will make the blended learning model possible.
The points that you have made, very important points that you've made, is that there's going to be a shift from learner-centric towards a learner-centric model. And also we will need to figure out new kinds of pedagogical skills. Yeah. The teaching is not going to be controlled by the teacher anymore, or it's not going to be content specific, because a lot of time teachers think that, my role is to cover a particular syllabus, right? So they have a textbook and they want to finish the syllabus, and going into the class, finishing the syllabus, and the game is over. I think one of the big things is going to be also how to engage students in learning activities, because that engagement, a lot of questions have come to me on, how do we make sure that students engage with the learning activities? Because in a classroom, I can control them, but when they're sitting at home, it's very difficult to engage. So Sonia, you want to address some of these questions? Yeah. What do you feel, how the teacher's mindset? So there are two aspects. One is using technology, and one is modifying pedagogy to meet that technology. So using technology, we have all learned. We all know to do Zoom now. But how about modifying that mindset to change the pedagogical methods?
So I will go to your second question first, just to add on, like as you said that first somebody was teaching in a classroom mathematics, now that person is replicating and sending the live streaming. So I would like to add that there is still an advantage in doing that. Reason being, if there was a learner in my class who was maybe a slow learner, but I kept in mind the pace of 90% of the learners in my class, and I moved on and I left those 5-10% behind. Now that learner has the facility to repeat my video 5 times, listen it back, and then go back to the video again and again. And I strongly believe that learning which is self-gained remains with the learner forever. This is one advantage which technologies gives to learners, that they, go online, search 5 videos, and what better than if it is a video of their own teacher to whom they relate to. So that is one advantage I still see, even if they have moved digitally. Second thing, as 21st century learners, we were trying to teach them skills of digital content creation, responsible digital citizens who do not plagiarize, who have their original thinking, who are creative. This is happening, without making an effort. So effortlessly, these skills are coming in place. And third aspect, what I want to touch is, my teacher says that we are not going to take a paper pen test. We know they all Google and there is a lot of cheating happening. We will have our own ways. We will randomly tell them that at the end of the class, we will randomly ask someone to turn on the camera and give viva on what we said. So, other kind of assessment, like ma'am talked about flipped teaching. So project-based learning, skill-based learning, video assessments, and then, different style of questioning. This is all these are all pedagogical changes which are coming naturally. So this is something good is happening naturally. Maybe somebody has not documented it, what is happening, it is happening naturally. So teachers are trying video based assessment, skill based assessment. And now the next question which you talked about, sir, can you tell me the second thing? I just missed where you wanted me to.
So the idea is, one is the flip in, learning as a teacher. I need to learn the tools to use.
Sure.
One aspect. The second is that my whole mindset has to change from a teacher-centric pedagogy to a learner-centric pedagogy, where discussions, reflections, allowing a child to ask questions. I think those, or a child, it's not. I look at it. It's not anymore. Education is not anymore a process to transfer information from one person to another. It's actually now going to be a process where the higher order thinking skills would need to be inculcated, and that would require a huge mindset in teachers. So
Yes.
how would we go about doing that in a school?
So, sir, I think this is not something which can be achieved overnight. This is a gradual process. So, maybe in our ecosystem, there are some teachers, those who are very progressive and they have this mindset already in place. If the observation of their lessons can be recorded, if other teachers can be asked to make an observation, so and they can be role model, there can be a system of peer learning. So first is that thing that can be implemented. Secondly, I means initially this was a thought of bringing in digital India and doing all those hackathon and all in the colleges. You would realize that now it is coming down to school. The school students are also taking part in these kind of competitions. So second thing is about giving exposure to student and teacher community about all these kind of things which is available. There are a lot many things available, but most of the people are not aware about it. Now just to give you an example, if as a teacher I am teaching them artificial intelligence and I am giving them definition and where it is used, the idea is if you start it this way, for example, you say that artificial intelligence is as simple, you automate any job where human was deployed and replace it with a technology, so that the human mind is free to do creative things. So human mind is not occupied in doing something clerical. So if something clerical was to happen, that machine is doing, that artificial intelligence is doing. Now students, you come up with the idea where you can leverage artificial intelligence to make one aspect of your life automated, so that artificial intelligence is doing your job. And if you are being spared from there, where would you like to channelize your energy and your spare time? And you give this chance to students, you see amazing kind of projects will come up. And as we said that changing about mindset, it is very important that some sort of motivation needs to be given. So there are three things that play in our, especially in our Indian system. Motivation ke साथ साथ here people need some sort of strict guideline and danda also, I would say. So first of all, the leadership mindset has to change, and then certain sort of incentives should be given to the teachers that this is a mandate that has to be done. So there has to be some sort of interventions in your classroom teaching, where children should be given opportunity to do project based learning, and wherever a teacher feel confidently, wow, I did this chapter beautifully and my students have done something amazing, and she shares it with the community. So management must promote these kind of things, must motivate teachers. So I think these kind of things will help. When we started this bringing in technology into our school, so we had this system of mentorship. So first of all, we saw limited result with mentorship, but when we started to reward people, say for example, if somebody really did just maybe a Kahoot quiz where the excitement was built in the classroom. So we covered the story of this teacher today, so and so did a wonderful class, excited student with a Kahoot quiz. So other teachers were also, भाई ये Kahoot quiz क्या होता है, कि इनकी सक्सेस स्टोरी आई स्कूल के फेसबुक पेज पे. तो आई थिंक अदर देन चेंजिंग माइंडसेट हैज टू बी सपोर्टेड बाय कंटिन्यूअस motivation, policy decision, and support from management.
I think that's great what you've just said. Creating, so the new system will now have new role models, and those role models we need to be recognized and rewarded. so that they can then motivate other people. And as you rightly said, the school management has to have a new vision, a vision of a blended learning school. And all that, what we thought earlier, needs to probably shift in a new direction. And it has to start from the top. Let me get some questions. Ramya, you have raised your hand. Would you like to ask your question? Ramya, are you there? Or was it just by a mistake that you raised your hand? Okay, so that might be an error that he did that. Okay, so let me put some of the questions and please go ahead, ask your questions. I have a question from Seema Gupta. Seema, go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, very good evening, all of you. Nice to listen to such a nice conversation over here. I am the principal of Universal High School, Aurangabad, and was listening to both the ma'ams over here. And, you know, it's the same thing. The teachers have become a warrior, no doubt about it. Teachers are doing a great job. And what I was thinking was, like, when it comes to the new economic policy, the implementation is the most important thing. And my question is, do you all agree with me that we need to have some mandatory training for our teachers so that this can be implemented properly?
Okay, that's a good question. Rachna, do you think we need a mandatory teaching? I mean, it should be mandatory for every teacher to go through a teaching?
Yes, I think it is mandatory for everybody to go for a teaching. So I would like to take this example and connect it with the CCE. A few years ago, we had CCE. So what happened? CCE was a beautiful model. If it was understood well, it was a beautiful model. But why did it not work very well? Because people were not trained together. People were not trained in the same way all across. Now, today, again, thanks to technology, what is happening is we meet like this. And people across the country, now we have teachers across the country, all of us are discussing on the same thing about different things. So now I could be from Hyderabad, somebody could be, as she was, Seema was from Aurangabad, there could be somebody from a smaller area. Now, this is training that's happening. This is learning that is happening. Now, every week when you discuss something about NAP, this is learning that is happening. So this is not mandatory training by the CPSC or the NCERT, but this is training that is happening. And each one of this will count. Each one of this will have its role to play when we start actually executing that policy. I think it is necessary that the training happens. Only then we will be able to bring in that equilibrium. We will be able to make that possible to the grassroots level. If that is not, then each one will understand in their own ways, in their own concepts, in their own understanding, which could be different from person to person. We know that very well as teachers. Same concept taught in the class is also understood in 5 different ways by 5 different students. So if that is the case in one class where the teacher is teaching, if a philosophy or a policy is given, how we interpret can be very different in different places. So definitely good training is required. Again, I would add that CBSE is working towards it. Now, I do not know if you know, we have these CBSE trainings which are happening all across. It's a 1-hour module that is happening. Now, you see the number of people who have been able to train through that. Now, in an earlier case, if from the school, if we were to send teachers for training, if it was in the same city, it would also require the logistics to be able to go there and leave school and all that. Now it is in the evening, available at your home. You sit at home and listen to what is happening. Learning does happen. And I think these micro modules which are happening are a very, very exemplary way of learning to be happening. Either it is coming through CBSE or through where learning agencies like your talks are. But all these are definitely helping, but also a mandatory learning, a mandatory teaching has to be done for the teachers to be able to get
Thank you, Rachna. Thank you very much. I also want to share that ICSL also organizes a training program. It's called Reset. It's a 30-hour long program spread over 3 weeks. And on the first week, we talk about technology changes that are coming in. The second week, we talk about pedagogical changes. And on the third week, we talk about assessment and student performance. So it's a comprehensive program. It's a long, every day, we just finished one batch last week, and we are starting the second batch soon. So anybody who is interested, go to the site, take a look at it. You might want to join that particular training program. Let me get Anita Sadanand. Anita, are you there with us? You have a question. Anita Sadanand, are you there? Okay, so this question says, flip learning, blended learning, hybrid teaching. Are we using these terms interchangeably? Sonia, you want to answer? What is the difference between flip learning, blended learning, hybrid teaching? People are a little bit confused.
So flip teaching is a word which is majorly puts the ownership on the student, on the learner more. However, the other two terms that can happen on the part of teacher basically. So if it's hybrid learning, maybe we are following a model where something is happening live between teacher and the learner, and something is happening with the help of technology. So some mode of synchronous teaching, some mode of asynchronous teaching. But majorly flip teaching is where we share the ownership with the learner.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sonia. Hia Mungia, you have raised your hand? Yeah, Hia, can you ask your question?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. This is Taruna Mongia. I'm HOD in Indraprastha International School. So in continuation with that, I have posted my suggestion also that definitely NCRT and CBSE, they all are doing fabulous job and trainings for teachers. But if we, my suggestion is that some kind of test should be there for teachers. Because when we have a test kind of thing for teachers, definitely they will learn and they will prove their credential also. And during these tests, learning for these tests, they will learn more. This is my suggestion. And if that kind of like CTET is the test. So if that kind of test will be initiated for teachers, so definitely that authenticity of learning for teachers, that can also be happen.
Taruna, abhi to bichare teachers, they're working so hard, and they're working so hard to make
That
sure
will prove the credential also. Sir, the motivation that Sonia ma'am told, that motivation should be there. So once a teacher get a motivated that she cleared that test, so that is a credential for teacher also, no?
No, I totally agree with you, but teachers will not like what you're saying. You're saying let's start testing teachers. So
I know I'm also a teacher. I'm
yeah, I
also
know
a
you're
teacher.
also a teacher, right? So that's very good. So Sonia, do you agree with that statement that teachers should be tested?
Sir, I agree partially on this because, when we put something called test, so some teachers take a setback. So maybe suppose they are going with open-minded for a training, but when they know there will be a test and that failure at the back of the mind, it's a test related to a tool. So that interest which they with courage they went to learn something that may push them back. But I agree to her partially because I know a platform where they do this daily class, but they issue certificate of attendance in lieu of assignment submission. So there is this portal where they genuinely want to help teacher and they conduct webinar every day. So what they say that you attend our webinar, but your certificate will be issued if you complete this assignment, and that assignment is given by the presenter. So I have taken 4-5 classes. So I also, as a presenter, when I check certain assignments, so there are some passionate people like ma'am. So they do assignment with all genuineness and submit, and they try to show their creativity, and some just submit just to get a certificate. So there is a mixed bag of, so it's more than assessment, it's a game of changing mindset.
Right. Well, so assessment can help, and
Yeah.
maybe it can be used on a voluntary basis in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, Mriganka, you have a question. You have raised your hand? Mriganka, can you go ahead, ask your question?
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Mine
evening.
was only an observation.
Okay.
The fact that we've switched to online teaching in a matter of months, what could be a better test than that for teachers?
Absolutely.
We have literally proved ourselves overnight. The teaching community has given everything and come out at the top insofar as inculcating the values, keeping in sync your curriculum and syllabus. What could be a better test than that? And I think all teachers across the country have topped it, and kudos to the whole lot of them. So, beyond that, any other test, I don't think really matters.
Okay. So your opinion is that no need to test because we are already putting in a lot of good effort, right? Thank you, Mriganka. We have Vidya Vinalya School, Hyderabad. Would you like to ask your question? Okay. Is that so? Sometimes people name. So there's somebody called Advance and Kiran. So Kiran, you want to ask your question? Okay, we have somebody called Advance. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, so there's the question on the QA board. Let me pick that from Shilpa Singh. Good evening, everyone. I would like to draw attention towards training parents more extensively along with teachers because they don't support change or technology at home. Shilpa Singh. So, Rachna, do you agree with that? Is it important for us to train parents, and what kind of training do you think parents need to accept online learning as a serious mode of learning?
I think the pandemic was a very big teacher. They accepted. In my opening remark itself, I said that earlier they were, it was the parents who had a major resistance on should we use technology as for learning. Now the tables have turned. They're no longer talking of using technology because now technology is the only way of learning. That is the only way their children will learn. So now the talk is happening of how it can be made for better learning. Yes, sometimes parents do need a little orientation. Sometimes parents do need a little help in understanding that this is where the learning is happening. Sometimes they also need an orientation to accept and trust their child, because very often when you give a gadget to the child, you keep believing that he is not doing the right things using that gadget, which is not the case. If the teaching is engaging for the child, if we as teachers can make it so engaging, they will learn. As somebody earlier had asked a question about, if he's in the class, I can monitor him. But I have a little different opinion on that. Even if he or she is in a class, he's physically there, but mentally being there is not assured. That assurance comes only from how we teach. How I teach in my class, or how any teacher teaches in her class, to make that thing possible that the child is available, is there, is how we teach. And once that is established, well, once the parent is able to see that the child is engaged, the child is really learning, that thing is happening, then I don't think we would have those. It wouldn't be majorly, it wouldn't be a question, but yes, we may have some parents asking, and that kind of an orientation or help would be required to be given by the schools for those respective parents.
So I think this problem might be in smaller cities a lot, where parents not be as digitally active themselves.
Yeah.
And I think in smaller cities we would see that problem more, where schools will have to make more effort to orient parent, to explain them that the learning is still happening even though the child is not coming to school. Because I know that there are parents who are also objecting to paying fees if the physical classes are not happening. So that might be happening in some of the cases, but that's, in general, all stakeholders need to be taken together when you're doing such a major transformation sometimes.
Sir, I would like to add on something
Yes,
here.
yes.
I generally call internet as an information superhighway, and I compare it with the transport system. So when a child learns to drive first, the parent doesn't give him a vehicle and make him go in on a highway. They first ensure that the proper training is given and the child has the license to drive on a highway. So ideally, parents should not leave their children without any training on this information superhighway internet also. So I think that is they know that there are danger because they themselves are not trained users. So when they themselves go, on this information superhighway and they see certain things which are discomforting to them, so they may feel that when my child will be there, so what my child is seeing, they start to think that way, and then that's why this kind of reluctance is there. What if, imagine, we orient the parent that there is something called parental control, there is something called how you can check what your child is seeing on the internet, how he is engaged with his device, you can control their screen time. I think those kind of orientations are any given day beneficial. That mindset, as Rachna ma'am rightly said, has changed. Whether this device can be used for learning or not, they 100% nowadays believe that this is a great tool for learning. But there is a negative dark side of it also, where parents can be oriented so that they can freely, without any tension, can give the device in the hand of the child.
Great, Sonia. I think you've made some very good points. Parental control. The only problem is sometimes, children actually know more than parents how to break these parental controls, and they learn it faster. But having said that, it's important to do that orientation. Okay, Vidya Vinalya School. Are you? Can you hear us? Do you want to ask your question?
Minute, please. Yeah, am I audible, sir?
Yes, now you're audible.
Yeah. Sorry for that. My question to you is that when we have trained our teachers and everything, but parents of our preschool are little reluctant to join. How far do you think it is right to use technology for preschoolers?
Okay, that's a very good question, because I think that was also in the court at some point, as to how do we, and there are some questions that I have also gotten, that how do you use technology to engage the little ones, the smaller ones? Because anyways, I think engaging them in a physical classroom is also a very mammoth exercise, and now they are remote and they're sitting with their parents, and they are kindergarten or class 1, class 2 students. How would you go about doing it? Rachna, you first. I think this is an important thing. I'll ask both of you to share your views on this.
So just imagine a scenario. A 2-year-old is sitting at home, is there with the mother in the kitchen, or the mother wants to do, she's working from home or she's doing something of her own. And the 2-year-old is there and he's constantly nagging the mother or troubling the mother. What does the mother do? A mother hands over the phone to him and says, okay, play a game, so that she's busy, she can do her work. She keeps him busy doing that. That is a scenario you see anywhere in the country, across the country. You see that's what is done. So are they not using technology there? Who is first giving them technology? Is it we, the teachers, or is it the parents? You look at a 1-year-old now, the way they handle the gadgets.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely. So then, what are we talking of? Are we actually speaking? Are we actually saying that technology is not to be used? And nobody is saying that you have them sitting in the classroom from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something of that thing. It's a 1 hour or a 2 hour thing that you are giving them, by which there is socializing that's happening. It's not only they're learning ABC or learning standing line or sleeping line. It's the socializing that is happening. They're meeting the teacher. They're understanding so many things. The question of why are we only discussing of usage of technology for education? Are they not using technology to play games? Are they not using technology to watch all those cartoons which they watch? They are doing it. And after the 2 hours of the class, the remaining 10 hours where the child is awake, what is the child doing? Is he not using technology? Ask in any home which has got young children, they would say that they are using it. So then, are we fooling ourselves? What are we talking if we are saying this? So I think it is important that they have the thing, but it is for a very limited amount of time that they do. Because I truly believe that when a pre-primary trained teacher is dealing with them in the classroom, she does activities, she does things which are meant for that age level. And then she is engaging them in a very useful manner. They are not playing games where they are shooting with guns. they're doing something which is a lot more productive. I think the parents should be asking for a longer duration of these classes and asking for less time in playing those games, because either way they're using technology. That's my take on it.
Thank you very much, Rachna. I think you're absolutely right. They're still using it. Now they're just using it for some other purpose. Sonia, your comments on that. Is it more difficult for teachers to engage the younger students, or is it equally difficult?
So, sir, how we handled this situation is, ma'am first talked about one element, what is gamification of learning. So, if you gamify learning, the activities use right kind of tool. There are plenty of tools which are available for free online, which teachers can leverage to gamify the learning. Maybe, just to give an example, if, for example, they play a quick game, I give you a word and then you have to give me five next word, and they use Flipgrid for it. So first is right kind of selection of tool, creating an environment. Now what we did, we changed our pattern of reporting for kindergarten. So there is a tool called Adobe Spark. So every activity what teachers did in the class, asked the child or the parent to send the picture, and then when a month back we send them that composition of all those evidences, that wow, she was the superstar of the month, did these activities. And the reporting was done in a manner that next month the parents, those who were not, or the children those who were not engaged, they also came up, wow, this my child also did, but he was not there in the newsletter or something, or his report doesn't look as thing. So to create some sort of assignment, excitement, so teachers started to make posters to invite children to the class. In tomorrow's class we will be doing this, we will have fun by doing this. So they started to make gifs and posters. They welcomed the children, and then once the children were there with them, they gamified the learning. So the approach and the pedagogy changed, but actually it was not that difficult, because at the end of the day every parent wants the child to learn. And when this came, the thing about screen time, so we had a mutual agreement. So parents and management had a webinar, and we discussed with them, as ma'am said, what about the unproductive screen time. So we have to see now that what is happening with screen time is the children have not stopped their unproductive screen time, and this productive screen time has been added. That's why there is so much hue and cry of screen time. What if that unproductive screen time is minimized or is reduced? I think the screen time will not be a problem anymore. So there was a little.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant things. I'll have to stop you here because we are only 3 minutes away from 6 p.m. and we have a habit of being very punctual here. And we have a lot of more questions which we could not take up. But thank you to all the participants for their brilliant questions and a variety of questions from everywhere. And what we will do is, there were questions about using technology for specific subjects like mathematics or science or language. So we may in the future plan a webinar where we will focus only on use of technology for a particular subject, so that we can go more deeper into and do justice to that in a 1 hour thing. We could not take up all those questions. So thank you very much. Closing remarks, Rachna ji, you go first, and then Sonia, 1 minute each, and then I get 1 minute to wrap it up. So Rachna ma'am, your last statement.
I think what pandemic, as you said in the very beginning, what pandemic has done is brought about that sea change in how we look at it. And I think taking it forward from here, that exhaustive and a very progressive document, which the NAP is, it requires a lot of dematerialization, if I could call it that, and digitalization of content, of pedagogy. And the success will depend on how transparently and effectively we, the teachers, can make it possible. The willingness and the adaptation of all the stakeholders, it has to be there. And to make it possible is no joke. But together, I think we need to work on it and to make it possible that it goes to far and wide in the country, to all the nooks and corners of the country, so that we make such a thing possible.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Sonia ji, your 1 minute, last statements.
So, sir, I would just like to say that the document NEP, whatever advisory it has issued and whatever guidelines are there, it's a beautiful document. But everything is still an advice and a guideline. The impact will come when there will be a change in mindset. There will be a willingness. There is nothing is impossible if we have the right intention to do it. And I'm sure the teaching profession is such a profession where the willingness of the teachers is the strongest to change that we have seen during the pandemic. And I'm sure all teaching community will take this very, very positively. We will change and we will make our learners change. And we are very hopeful that exciting and new things will happen in our country, and we will be able to take that benchmark to the next level. And we will try to fulfill that dream which government has tried to put up in place.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you very much. And the last statement for me for 1 minute. So it's really important for us to understand that no policy can create better quality education for our students until and unless we as teachers want it to work. We are the final people. We interact with our students. We are the only person that can implement any policy. And if we get committed to it, the policy can show wonderful results. Having said that, it's also important in terms of technology for us to understand that if you have any content, any learning, for example, news, we have radio news, we have television news, we have print news, we have news on internet. When the medium changes, the delivery of news changes, the whole style changes. There is a different style to deliver news on radio and different style for television or newspaper or internet. Technology is only a medium. It's a medium that we are using to make sure that learning happens. It has a lot of wonderful tools, but the way we used to teach in the classroom is not going to be the way we are going to be teaching using technology. So I think a lot is going to change. I'm very sure that the kind of commitment all of you have shown, the fact is, if you are spending 1 hour with us on Friday every week, there is a lot of commitment that you have towards improving things. I'm very sure you will be able to do it, and you will be able to inspire others to do it also. So with that note, thank you very much for coming to Friday at 5. We hope to see you again next time. Next time, we are going to be looking in detail on what would be the blended learning pedagogy. So right now, we are talking about technology. In the next session on Friday, we'll go deeper. We'll talk about connectivism, theory of learning, and we will try to understand how blended learning pedagogy would work. So don't forget to come back at 5 o'clock, Friday at 5, your destination for awesome updates about education. And I thank my speakers for joining us. Have a very, very good weekend, all of you. Thank you, ma'am.